All right, so let's talk about sight fishing, bed fishing. Some people are for it, some against it. Whatever, if you're against it, that's on you. I love looking at a big one just tailing up and it's like, boom, you know. And the process of figuring out a sight fish. I mean, it's where like Shaw Grigsby is still probably one of the greatest sight fishermen ever in the sport, just because he's won more money sight fishing probably than anybody in the history of the sport. But understanding the personalities of the fish and knowing what to throw and when to throw it, how to throw it, and everybody's got their own little selections of things. And you know, I think the number one thing you have to have is a high visibility bait. So, and most of the time it's going to be the males, you know, when they get stubborn and they're sitting there, and you just want a bait that you can see whether they've got it in the mouth, they got the tail, they're just pulling the tail off and swimming away. So you want to make sure your bait's gone before you set the hook. So that's where white baits come into play. And like for me, it's like I've got some white pit boss that you know, that I love throwing there. But the thing is that even with a pit boss, sometimes they just start grabbing the tails here, and they'll grab one and just swim away with it, and they'll do that like 20 times, and it pisses you off. And here's a bait I designed for Berkley. It's gone, but it's called the Slop Craw, and I had these made in white too. You can get a 5/0 hook in there, but it's hard for them to grab just one little pincher. So these little things. So whatever your white bait selection is, you know, it's I did a lot of 5-inch white grubs in the past, and here's a little tip: is like, yeah, they started grabbing the tail, swim away, grab the tail, swim away, then you can pinch the tails off, and that's what I've done with the Slop Craw too. Is I just rip the claws off, and also now you just got a white stub and a 5/0 hook. They don't have a choice but to get it. So that's a little tip for you. But all the different personalities of fish, well, what are the bait selections you need? A drop shot is deadly on a bed. The thing is, I don't like to use a big worm. So I got a 5-inch straight money, and color can change. It's like I use a lot of margarita, watermelon red, watermelon candy, Skeet Green Money Magic. Those are like my go-to colors. But you want a little bit smaller bait just so it's easier for that fish to get the bait into the mouth. So 5-inch straight money on a drop shot. You have to have a bluegill of some sort. And I've gone through a lot of different bluegills through the years because it's bass and bluegills don't go together. It's like you'll see bass running bluegills off all day long. So the newest one that is in my repertoire is the new gilly. And I'm not swimming, I'm not doing anything. I'm just putting it on a 3/4 ounce, half ounce to a 1 ounce sliding sinker. It is, you know, a 5/0 hook in there, but that is a bluegill down on the bed. Then, you know, I got some old, I think these are, you know, little bluegill shaped bodies. I can fish this on a Texas rig or a drop shot rig. So something bluegill-ish, but have to add one to my list here. Hands down, a must have is a weightless worm. So for me, it's a Berkley Powerbait General. It can be a max scent or a Powerbait, either one, but a weightless worm is an absolute must. I prefer to fish it weedless style, just for the fact that you just don't, you know, you don't want to snag the fish, you don't want to snag on the bottom, you want it to be able to stay weedless. So, but a weightless worm, there's something about that slow fall down on the bed that sometimes just is the absolute key to triggering a bite, and just that real slow, weightless, little just movement on the bed. So weightless worms, a must have as well. I always think of this when sight fishing, is that I want a bluegill imitation, a crawdad imitation, then I need my high visibility bait. Those are like the must have. So that's where probably, like, I love a pit boss on a bed, just trying to imitate a crawdad. So watermelon red is like my go-to first choice in color. It seems like when sight fishing, bed fish, there's something about that red glowing in the water, whether it's the crawdad, but watermelon red, or California, those types of colors are great colors for sight fishing. And those become your standard, you know, like here's a little watermelon red crawdad. But then you get into the unique stuff. Like how do you trigger a big female? You you know, the male's up there doing all the dancing and he's getting your bait off there. And a lot of times, you know, even a little pit boss, so the female will just sit back and let the male do all the work. But how do you get the female to get in there and want to do some of the work? I'm like, all right, I've had enough of this shit. I'm in there. So then you start getting into big baits. And these are like baits. I've had this for years and I still use it though. But that's a water dog. And I don't even know who makes this, how I got them, but I bought these years and years ago. There's something about a water dog on a bed that just bass, they can't handle. Females will go goo-goo over stuff like that. And then there's just like the big giant Tor tubes. You know, I fished this, put a ounce and a half sinker on it, a 10-aught hook, but that big giant white profile. And I got watermelon, you know, red. That's pretty much watermelon red and white are the two colors that I use. But I mean, these big giant baits, and I got big swim bait. I got, you know, 10, 12-inch swim baits that I'll throw on there too, just to get these fish fired up and like, I don't know if they feel like it's a competitor or what it might be. But those are just baits that, you know, I look at going through my arsenal and like, if I'm gonna go sight fish, and you know, I gotta have, usually I'm gonna have 8 to 12 rods rigged just for sight fishing. And it's from little tiny stuff all the way up to big gigantic stuff. So just make sure if you're gonna go out sight fishing, think about that, those baselines, and it'll help you catch a few more dead fish.